You know, until recently, I never really realized how much I liked fairies as a fantasy creature. As a kid, there were pretty specific tropes about them that just didn't appeal to me. Or, actually, kind of the opposite. They were like the blue fairy from Pinocchio or the fairy godmother from Cinderella. There just wasn't much to them. They were just people with wings and magic, and neither of those two characters had much personality in their favor. They didn't feel as realized as even, say, Snow White's dwarves, which at least took influence from already established myths and such. I mean, that's partially because the idea of a fairy is a much more modern idea. As far as mythology goes, fairies were literally any fae creature. Elves were fairies, mermaids were fairies, even trolls were fairies. A fairy tale was a story that just had magic. It wouldn't be a long time until they got their own special identity as very small winged humanoids, usually with a great deal of magic within them. And the first time I think I was exposed to the modern idea of a fairy was with Tinkerbell. And Tinkerbell is a big asshole. It's actually kind of funny in a weird way how Disney ran with her as their cash cow character after they stopped making the direct-to-video sequels, because in Peter Pan, Tinkerbell is just the worst. She is top 10 worst Disney characters bad. Despite never speaking, her attitude is just horrible. She's jealous, sadistic, and just never a pleasant stage presence. Yeah, it's no wonder I didn't like fairies when this was the most famous one of them all. People shit on characters like Ariel or even Elsa as a bad, selfish female character. You guys are all forgetting on Tinkerbell. Although I have to assume that a lot of her worst aspects were toned down in her direct-to-video movies, though I've never seen them so I can't verify, at least at present. As for this kind of fairy though, I did encounter them quite a bit in video games, like the Zelda series specifically. But even in Ocarina of Time, they still didn't have much of a personality. Like, you go to the Great Fairy and she's all like, "Oh, hello there, 10-year-old boy. I have no idea who you are, but you played a song, so take this gemstone that lights things on fire. I'm sure you're going to use it responsibly." Which I did. Hey, Navi, I'm gonna start putting fairies in bottles and never letting them out. These things don't have any air holes. Do you mind? No? Okay. Like, there's no indication that even the fairy in the bottle cares what you've done until Wind Waker. And they still heal you anyway, like they forgot that it was you who put them into their bottle. Tattle definitely had a personality, but she also went down the asshole route. Man, that's another reason I didn't care about fairies as a kid. Whenever they were given a personality, they were just always the biggest dicks. Well, I mean, there was one other reason that I didn't care about fairy-focused media, and that was girlification. Fairies were seen as the girly fantasy creature. They were usually given something like butterfly wings, and a movie about them was usually marketed towards girls, and by usually I mean always. And much of this wasn't interesting to me in the slightest. It was a pre-Friendship is Magical world after all, and I wasn't really willing to experience girly media quite yet. Then Pokémon happened. Well, Pokémon happened a while ago, but in Generation 6, they added the Fairy-type Pokémon, and Fairy-type just kicks ass. No, seriously, Fairy-type is my favorite Pokémon type. Not just because they floor dragons, but because so many individual Pokémon are just fantastic. Everyone knows how powerful Gardevoir is, but Togekiss is an amazing paraflincher. Azumarill is hard to beat, Klefki is incredibly versatile, and Whimsicott, this stupid piece of cauliflower, is my favorite Pokémon of all time. Gonna substitute, gonna leech seed, gonna encore you into that stat move you use, then switch out into a Toxicsaur, and you are going to have a hell of a time. But what fully sold me on fairies is a video by a user named chadversity. He's a medieval enthusiast who goes into what kind of weapons fantasy creatures would actually use if they were real, and bound by our laws of reality and physics. And it turns out, fairies are OP. In most fiction, they're portrayed as a rogue thief type, and they usually plink things off with a bow or magic, when in reality, their playstyle would actually be closer to a barbarian. Due to the square cube law, they can wield weapons that are a lot larger themselves, and because they're so small, they're hard to hit. And being small also allows them to easily target vulnerable areas in armor. Sword-fighting fairies can be a very frightening force to go against. And for a while now, I've been longing to see some kind of fictional work use this kind of take on them. Builds on this version of a fairy. Now when I imagine fairies in my own fantasy worlds, they're like this warrior race. Their only real weak point is their wings. So they've got this culture of never turning their back on the opponent, and charging straight at their enemies, taking care of problems swiftly and effectively. And I've just kind of fallen in love with this idea of badass sword-fighting fairies. Then one of my patrons, Brandon Chan, requested me to look at the movie Strange Magic. This is a 2015 film about sword-fighting fairies, and I knew that it was a match made in heaven. I mean, the film is bad, Horrendous. But I knew that it was a bad film before I even got to see it, because it came out in January. If you don't know, January is a film dumping ground. When the holidays are over, award season is over, and no one is going out to theaters, studios just throw in whatever product that they don't care about onto market. Norm of the North is another film that also came out in January. And generally speaking, the worst animated film of the year comes out in January every year. But I thought that even if I didn't like this film, I might have gotten some interesting ideas from it, seen an interesting concept, you know? I mean, the history of the film is definitely interesting. It's a Lucasfilm production, and their only animated film that's not within the Star Wars franchise. When Disney bought Lucasfilm on one of their earliest steps to worldwide media conquest, this was the first film that came out from them. However, George Lucas had apparently been planning on making this film for 15 years. If you're wondering, 15 years before this film came out, yes, is still post-Phantom Menace. I'm halfway sure that George Lucas got his brain, dissected by aliens in 1999, because Strange Magic is the worst theatrical film that I have ever seen. Animated or not. Possibly the worst film that I've ever seen, full stop. That movie that you're about to comment is so much worse than this one? No, you're wrong. Stop typing. Strange Magic is worse. Drawn together, even though that's not theatrical, Emoji Movie, Norm of the North, Mars Needs Mom, Shark Tale, Chicken Little. I would marathon those films back to back before ever watching this piece of shit again. Brandon, you picked a ripe one, that's all I'm gonna say. And despite how much I don't like this movie, I have no ill will towards the person who requested it. Funny story, when I got the film, I thought there was a screw up and they sent me the wrong DVD. Strange Magic is like one of those Barbie films, at least in theory. It's supposed to be a cute fairy film aimed at young girls. It's even a jukebox musical, which is a genre that's not usually aimed at men. The description on the back even goes into typically girly fairy tale things. The princess who has sworn off love, sugar plum fairies, and there's a knight somewhere in all of this. It's definitely aimed at young girls. So, can someone please tell me why the box of this film looks like it's more appropriate for Pan's fucking Labyrinth? What the hell even is this? The fairy characters look like those creepy porcelain dolls from the 1800s. There's this little rat thing with a grin that would have made the Cheshire Cat blush. And the tagline, "Everyone deserves to be loved"? I've never seen a tagline that was proven so bullshit just by the goddamn cover of the thing. But you never judge a book by its cover or a DVD by its box, right? Even in this case, I will say that you shouldn't, because the book is far, far worse than its cover. You want to see what the characters are like in the movie? No, you don't. But I'm going to show you anyway. So, with the fairies, not only do they look like porcelain dolls, they move with the quality of a direct-to-DVD film. This is not a combination that works, unless you're making a Silent Hill game. Then you got these, sprite things, which is weird. They're like fairies for the fairies, and they look like fucking Groot. It's a good thing they're so small, because their faces look hideous.
Smile, my dear. Smile. A real smile.
This is one of my better ones.
Who the hell signed off on this? Then there's Sunny. The film calls him an elf, but he looks more like a garden gnome that had his beard stolen, with some of the worst motion capture that I've ever seen. I actually don't know if the film used motion capture. I don't think they did, but however the fuck he was animated, Milo from Mars Needs Moms looks way better, and way more technically sound. Every expression from him is just way too photorealistic and uncanny, and it's constantly a pain and a half. Not helping is that whenever he's on screen, he makes these constant close-ups that just look so uncomfortable. You thought that rat thing looked awful on the cover? This is what the fucking thing looks like in the movie.
Who are you?
They call him an imp, and I'm like, no. First of all, this is an imp. They always look like small little devil guys. Sure, they can be a little bit creepy, but not like this. This is not an imp. This Bartok reject is an opossum with rabies. But nothing in this world, or any other world for that matter, could prepare you for the Bog King. Are you looking at him? Because quite frankly, I'm having a hard time doing that. I reiterate, This film is not a horror film. It's a fairy tale aimed at 6-year-old girls. And these are the most disturbing visuals that I've seen in any animated film. Like, a funny story, the back of the box says PG for some action and scary images. If I was a parent, I'd be all like, no, Summer, we're not watching that movie. Let's do something that's less likely to give you nightmares, like play through Resident Evil 7. I seriously take back everything I've ever said about Shark Tale or Mars Needs Moms. The animation isn't just bad. It's hard to look at. I like to think that I've come up with stronger barriers for this kind of stuff, but maybe it's just been a while, but I can't look at the screen without cringing in this film. But animation is one thing. There have been pretty good movies with not the best animation. Polar Express is often pointed to as an example of that. So let's go beyond the style and look at the substance. What is the substance of Strange Magic? A strange piece of shit, but I'm getting ahead of myself. As I stated earlier, Strange Magic is a jukebox musical, and as such, I'm a bit out of my element. Before now, I don't think I've ever seen a jukebox musical, and I understand that this is probably not the best introduction to the genre, but to be upfront, the idea of a jukebox musical has always just baffled me. Instead of, I don't know, writing your own music for the musical, you just take songs that other people have written and throw them in. I know that that has to be too harsh. Recontextualization is a very real thing in art, and it's important to something like a jukebox musical, and it's a power that they can easily harness. The problem is, all too often, that they don't. Instead, here's how jukebox musicals usually seem to be made, at least from my perspective. Hey, we need a love song here. Cool, I'm just gonna turn on the pop station until I get something that remotely fits. It all feels like very backwards. Instead of coming up with lyrics that fit your characters and your situation and the emotions and the motivations perfectly, you find something that might remotely fit maybe. Like the title, Strange Magic. There is no strange magic in the entire film. Strange Magic comes from a pop song that was already out before this movie was a twinkle in George Lucas's eye. Strange Magic is an Electric Lights Orchestra song from 1975. I get it. Yes, I get the idea that love is a strange magic, but this movie came out 40 years after that song. That idea has gotten to be a little bit of a cliche, don't you think? When you do a jukebox musical really well, I'm sure you can tap into some powerful emotions. But all too often, and this is especially true of animated jukebox musicals, the only one who has any creative input is the marketing department. The Alvin and the Chipmunks movies are most notable for that, and the Trolls films aren't far behind. And this is also an annoying film for me to tackle, because that means that copyright is going to be a hell to edit around. So, sorry about that, Coda.
No copyright law in the universe is going to stop me!
In fact, I'm kind of at a loss of how to review this movie altogether, because besides what I just said, there's actually not much to say about this film. It doesn't have much of a plot to speak of. It's inspired by a Shakespeare play, A Midsummer's Night Dream, which is more unique than Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, or Macbeth at least. But seriously, dude, Mr. Star Wars, you waited 15 years to make an animated Shakespeare film. But whatever, let's get into it. It's a fairly simple standard plot. There's a fairy kingdom of pure golly gee whiz goodness, where everyone is just so happy and good that they giggle around like lobotomized eggplants. This movie is already reminding me of something, and it ain't Shakespeare. This reminds me of My Little Pony. G3 My Little Pony. Except scary. Well, considering those expressions, scarier. Anyway, this kingdom is alongside the Dark Forest, which is full of the big bad evilly evils. Because, you know, when you toy with an idea for 15 years, you just can't come up with something more creative than the Dark Forest. Seriously, dude, the Dark Forest is Mount Doom just on the other side. Fucking hell. Misery Mire, Witch's Wood, Evil Land of the Super Duper Evil. Try fucking harder. The play has several players and none of them are good. Let's start with our main character, Marianne. She's our fairy princess for this movie. Well, one of the two of them. Let's see, a main character in a film aimed at girls that came out in the 2010s. Let me guess, she gets her heart broken by a man in Act 1 and decides that she's an independent woman who doesn't need anyone for any reason at all.
Again. Don't tell me what it's all about.
Yep. Okay, I know that the damsel in distress kind of deal and the naive one who doesn't understand the first thing about the world around her are both well-worn female character types. But when you meet old cliches with new cliches, you don't actually solve the problem. Marianne is not a well-written female character. She's just another type of one-dimensional bland. Instead of people who don't know how to write women just guessing at straws, they're just writing what they're being told to write without really trying to write a female character. Not helping is that she falls into all the tropes that people who even like this type of character hate. Sorry to spoil the ending of this movie, but Marianne does fall in love with a man at the end of the film. In fact, once she starts falling in love, she becomes all melty and vulnerable and must be led around by the male main character. Keep in mind, this is also after the other favorite trope with this kind of character, the badass female character who don't need no man, getting captured by the villain anyway, because we can't have her really actually take care of herself, because then the men just wouldn't be able to save her. Also, the changes that Marianne go through are paced horribly. Like, when she gets cheated on by Roland, who I'll get to, she goes from this,
But I can tell, falling in love with you.
to like this badass warrior type character. Because of how the movie is shot and paced, it looks like she made this change in one afternoon. But no, it's been like a year. Also, she can't sing at all. Actually, let me get this out of the way. This is a movie in which over half the dialogue is singing, and no one, I mean literally no one in the film actually has the technical ability to sing. You'd think I'd complain about that, but no. It's actually a good thing when they sing, even though no character in this movie can sing, because when the characters are singing, they're not speaking. And when they speak, it sounds like this.
Pull your head out of the clouds. Clouds full of boys.
And when I heard that line, I understood exactly why this was a jukebox musical. Because every single line of anything that is unique to this film is just fucking awful.
You can't give him that.
Why not?
He's too good looking?
I said that this movie was made for 6-year-olds. I think this movie was made by 6-year-olds. This is every line of dialogue. Every single line of dialogue in the film is like this.
You could have been killed.
No, don't look.
Or worse, seriously disfigured.
Hey,
Oh, hello, Roland. Who is Roland? Roland is the worst character in the movie. You ever watch Shrek 2? Imagine Prince Charming from that film, with all of his arrogance, but played totally straight. He's still the kind of villain in this film, but unlike Prince Charming, which was just likable in his arrogance, at least in Shrek 2, not so much in 3, Roland here is just the worst. His introduction is that he wants to marry Marianne. Why? Because he wants an army. That's his only motivation in the whole film. He wants his army so damn much that he decides to cheat on Marianne, the bride who would get him that on the day of his fucking wedding. The man cheats on the day of his wedding. Give Hans some credit, at least he wanted the whole fucking kingdom, not just an army. Roland is just this constant, irredeemable, arrogant prick with nothing likable about him. And he can't even keep his speaking accent consistent. Half the time he speaks like a normal regular guy, the other half of the time it sounds like he's trying to pull off an Elvis impersonation. This is a problem that the Bog King also has, and I don't get it. When Roland cheats on Marianne and Marianne wants absolutely nothing to do with him, he considers getting a love potion made, which is one of the few things that actually connects it to that Shakespeare play, which is odd because the love potion trope is something that should have probably stayed in the Shakespearean era. The whole love potion trope is something that has been harder and harder to use in the past decade or so because of the implications surrounding it. They're usually compared to date rape drugs, and some people think that that might be a little bit too far. After all a love potion does is make you entirely aroused and involved with one specific person without their consent being a factor at all, and you'd have to be looking way too into things to see any similarities, right? To be fair, I don't think I've ever seen one story where a love potion is seen as a good idea. In any story that has a love potion, it's always seen as a terrible way of getting what you want. In the original Shakespeare play, it was a prank by Puck, although even on that level, it usually still has a level of problematic to it. The problem with stories that say love potions are a problem say that the problem with using a love potion is that the love is hollow and not really earned. Not that the person you use it on has, autonomy and might not actually do anything with you, but You know, a love potion is not something that any character we're supposed to root for would ever consider using, unless they're like really young, like the CMC from Friendship is Magic. It's definitely not something that's ever portrayed as a good or even okay thing to do in any piece of media ever. Except for Strange Magic, where a hero, Sunny, decides to use a love potion, which is why Sunny is the worst character in the film. And quite frankly, the film's portrayal of Sunny is where the movie gets really disgusting. So, because Sunny can't manage to actually say that he likes Marianne's boy-obsessed sister Dawn, Roland convinces him to make up a love potion. Sunny hasn't even asked and got rejected. He just doesn't have the guts to actually ask her out. As far as using a love potion, there's no consideration on Sunny's part. He doesn't see any issue with doing this at any step of the matter. Hell, even when it's revealed that he was going to use a love potion on a fucking princess, the people around him aren't even disgusted. They just go, ooh, so scandalous. Like they're just learning that he's got a crush on the princess. And the love potion isn't even a factor. And you know what the best part of all of this is? After Dawn gets affected by this love potion to the point of falling in love with the Bog King, and after she gets kidnapped thanks to Sunny's actions, Sunny still gets the girl in the end. He receives no punishment or comeuppance for any of this. I mean, yes, he has to get the potion back, but that really doesn't matter in the end. After all, like the box of the movie said, everyone deserves love. Even sleazes like Roland and Sunny. At least that's what the king thinks. And let me be absolutely clear on this one. There's a lot of debate as to which is the worst character in the movie, but the king is the worst character in the fucking movie. Yeah, I know. But what about Roland or Sunny? What fucking idiot told you that? Only an idiot would think that anyone but the king is the worst character in the goddamn film. Let me make this as clear as I possibly can. Because of the king in this movie, I have to say these words. Buck Cluck is no longer the worst father in a Disney film. Thanks to this guy. This guy right here. This guy. After his precious daughter gets cheated on her fucking wedding day, the king is still all over Roland and is alright with him still trying to get with his daughter. Literally calling him romantic when he crashes a party just to hit on her again. This is after cheating on her on their wedding day! He's not even a prince, so royal whatever doesn't even apply here. Like, this king has the nerve, the brass balls to say, once again, I reiterate, after Roland cheated on his daughter during their wedding day, something that he knows, he's still willing to say that Roland still loves her. And then there's this scene where he goes on and on saying that Marianne will be a better leader with a king at her side.
But if not Roland, then there has to be someone else.
No, there doesn't.
Maybe if you got out more often,
Let it go, Dad.
you'll be a stronger ruler with a king at your side.
Hello, United States government. Can you please tell me what the jail sentence is for regicide? Like, seriously though, where does this movie even get off? Yeah, it'd be one thing if this movie was just as ugly as sin on the outside, but it's as ugly as sin on the inside too. Maybe it's metaphorical, like the king of the goblins here.
I've been insulted, disrespected. I've been
Look, no. There's only room for one singing king of goblins in my life, and this guy's not David Bowie. This movie is just filled top to bottom with terrible messages. Like, it really seems to despise the idea that some people might just be happy alone.
Well, if I have to look under every rock, I won't let you die sad and alone.
And I get it. It's a movie about love, and they've got to showcase how it's the most wonderful, awesome thing ever. There's a way to do it without judging people's life choices, and this is just not the way to do it.
It's perfume.
Are you a girl?
Isn't it obvious?
Like, is this supposed to be funny? Progressive? Oh yeah, it's as progressive as having King Roland faint when he sees his daughter kissing an elf, who happens to be black. Kids, this is why we proofread, because when you don't, who knows what you're actually saying under the text. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the king was a racist fuck, because he's definitely a sexist fuck, but you gotta make sure that that's what you really want to convey. And I think the movie still wants to say that this guy is still a good person, when he's not. Nothing about this film works. The cinematography is shit. It uses effects that can only work in a 2D Saturday morning cartoon, like this one right here. That is something that can only really work in a 2D film because it looks as awkward as shit in 3D. The dialogue takes a potato peeler to my brain. It's at the point where you think that this is a parody of a little girl's movie.
You were both nearly killed.
You make such a big deal out of everything. Ah, I'm a total mess! We have to get ready for the ball.
I mean, with the scariest shit animation, the vapid dialogue, the terrible singing, the awful messages, is there anything about this movie that works? No, not really. Okay, well, there's one teeny tiny little thing that you can give this movie credit for. Falling in love with the villain is actually a unique twist that you don't see too often. And I don't mean a Romeo and Juliet where both families are against each other, but where one side is unabashedly the objective villain in the story. I mean, the Bog King also tried to use a love potion, so we don't deserve love anyway, but it's a nice idea. Then again, what's a nice idea when you are strange magic? It's not like a sword-fighting fairy musical movie couldn't work. You just have to change literally everything about this one to make it work, though. For starters, make the animation not god-awful. But beyond that, when I think fairies, I don't imagine modern pop or even 70s pop. When I think fairies, I'd imagine Celtic music. And well, it's kind of pointless to do a movie about fairies without humans also being a part of it, because in this fairy movie, there really isn't much of a point to these characters being fairies. I mean, yeah, they're small and everything, but that only gives us shots of, like, these giant spiders and centipedes. It's not very pleasant. Beyond that, they don't do anything with it, besides the Bog King's all-too-common catchphrase, "I'm gonna rip off your wings." Yeah, the characters are small, but it's barely something to concern. If you want a movie that goes into the implications of characters being small and how it affects their lives and their world, you gotta watch Ariadne. Then again, you gotta watch literally any other movie in existence over strange magic. Now you know what I do with DVDs this bad. Let's take care of the trash.
Strange magic, huh? What a strange dish this shall make. Let's go! Huh, this is a problem. It doesn't fit in the pot. Wait, this is a movie about fairies. I've got a better idea. We can get rid of this movie if we all work together. On the count of 3, you must all comment below that you do not believe in fairies. Alright? 3, 2, 1. Say, I don't believe in fairies. And it is done. Well, that was an experience.